Payday 2 is a game that features a lot of bugs because of how large it is. Regardless the fact that it is almost a decade old. There are still lots of bugs that haven't been fixed for years. And also new bugs are still being discovered even today. So I figured I might as well make a video about these bugs and, just show them. Now obviously, I'm just gonna show these bugs that are currently present in the game. At the date of the release of this video, I'm not gonna show some bugs that have been a thing like 5 years ago. But anyway, I'm convinced there are some bugs in this video that you lads have never seen or heard about. So I'm pretty sure this should be quite interesting. Oh, and before I forget, all of these bugs that I will show can be done without the usage of mods. Of course I won't show bugs that will happen if you were to use mods, because that's kinda dumb in my eyes, for very obvious reasons. Anyway, let's start with it, I guess. We will be doing this in the following order. We're just gonna start with relatively small things that don't do much and work our way up to some really weird things that can manipulate the entire game with relative ease. Stuff like that makes cops not spawn anymore, or various other interesting stuff. Let's start with some weird hitboxes. There are some walls in this game that don't really have good hitboxes, like here in Goatsim for example. If you stand in this doorway, you can just shoot cops right through it. Something that is way less useful is this funny staircase on Big Bang for example. You can just sort of jump into it. It doesn't really do anything, it just looks kinda weird and funny I guess. On the same heist there's also this window over here that strangely breaks every time over and over again, somehow whenever a cop chops through it. I guess this bank has some sort of infinite glass generator built into it, I don't know. Something else that can be infinitely repeated are these civilians spotting you. For some reason, sometimes when civilians spot you, they don't really care about it. It says detected, but nothing really happens. The meter just goes up again and you're spotted again, and repeat. This will go on forever, if I were to stay in this position here. But, as I just said, nothing will ever happen. I don't know why this even happens in the first place, and why no one fixed it either. This bug has been in the game for an ungodly amount of time by now. Another thing that is just odd are these police vehicles on the biker heist that drive here at the start of the heist. For some reason these two vehicles here are kinda in the ground, but this one over here is totally fine. I'm not sure how this went unnoticed. This just seems to be some very lazy work, I don't know. Now back to Big Bang. This time being the holdout version. There's still the PC room server door here, but without any icons. It's intended to not be opened whatsoever, because why would you open it? It's holdout. But you can actually still open it with a saw, even though there isn't an icon for it. It's not really useful though, since you cannot interact with the PC. It only gives you some good cover though. You actually used to be able to do the same on the biker heist actually, with this door that is in front of the safe for the chrome skull. But Overkill actually fixed this recently, which was quite interesting to me. Because when I was writing the script, I actually thought this still would be in the game, but I guess I was wrong. On Brooklyn 1010, these cop cars that you have to move at the end of the heist sometimes face in the wrong direction. When you interact with them to move them away to make space, they flip 180 degrees instantly. This won't happen every time, only a few times for some reason. I don't know why this happens. Now this is something that I'm sure you people are pretty familiar with. There are lots of things that you can just grab through the walls, like deployables. This is pretty useful and many people use this, understandably so. But the same can actually apply to some objective items, like on Hoxton Breakout Day 2 with the server here. Instead of opening this door, you can actually grab the server, assuming it's in the right spot, straight through the wall, and spare a keycard or not waste time with a drill. The same applies on Birth of Sky as well. You can interact with the flare to signal lock through the roof, assuming it's in the right position. On the same heist you can also jump up on this flag here and do some cool parkour. But this isn't really that useful. You can kill the cops earlier, but on higher difficulties you will be the one that is gonna be killed earlier, since the cops shoot you pretty much ASAP once they spawned. Another small thing is the infamous melee bug. I'm sure this at least happened once to every one of you. Whenever you sprint jump and use the melee at the same time, you can have this visual bug where the melee weapon is displayed instead of your actual weapon. As I just said, this is just visually. You can still shoot your weapon, and if you were to melee attack, again, you will have your correct weapon displayed again. I couldn't actually replicate this, so I had to use some footage I found on YouTube. But it does still happen in the current vanilla game. On Watch Dogs Day 1, if you secure 4 bags of coke, the escape helicopter arrives for you to leave. You can speed this up by buying the asset car instead. The car arrives before the helicopter. However, if the driver in the car dies to the cops, you will have to wait for the helicopter to arrive and then escape with the helicopter. However, you can actually kill the escape driver in the car at any point, since he's actually standing right over here, behind the fence waiting for you. Now if you equip a grenade launcher and shoot over the fence, you can actually kill him, which will trigger the escape helicopter early to arrive, meaning you won't have to secure any bags for day 2. Now obviously this means you will be soft-locked on day 2, because, well, you know, you didn't secure any bags. So this strat only really works well on Crime Spree, since you don't have to do day 2 afterwards once you finish day 1. On the same heist you can also shield clip. This does work on other heists as well, but it works really well on this heist specifically. Whenever you have a shield, preferably a winter shield that spawns on high crime spree, and actually runs towards you, you can get him stunned by an ECM chamber's feedback. He gets stunned in a way so that he falls on the ground, and if you stay inside him, he can actually clip you through the ground. This is pretty useful in this heist because you can jump out of bounds and then get spawned back into the heist like this. Then do some funny parkour right over here and finish the heist in style. On Slaughterhouse, if you're good enough at jumping, you can actually jump inside of the containers at the time they are being closed to be lifted out of the area. It looks pretty funny, but you do stay outside of the container once it actually starts moving, so it doesn't really do anything. It makes for a good laugh though. Now this next thing is something that barely ever happens. I have encountered this like 3 or 4 times in my 7,000 hours, but I've never got to record it, sadly. Whenever you stand directly on the same spot where cops would spawn, you can get lifted out of the area whenever only shields spawn in that spot, resulting in some interesting views. You see, when cops spawn somewhere, they have a hitbox placed there already, regardless the fact if they are there already or not. And if that cop is a shield spawn, it gets a bit weird if you were to stand in that spot. It places you somewhere completely else. You all know what tear gas is in this game and how it works. But did you know whenever you are the host and someone goes into custody while they are standing inside of tear gas, the gas effect is being transferred over to the host for some reason, resulting into an infinite gas damage effect until you land into custody yourself, which will happen later on, or you finish the heist first, I don't know. I guess you can also call it reversed gas effect, since whenever you go into actual gas, the damage will be gone since you already have the gas damage effect to begin with. It's pretty weird. When you are a client, the cops can actually shoot you at the same time whenever they perform an action. Like for example when they crawl up the window on rats, or jump down this wall on the Heat Street heist, they can shoot you at the same time while they are climbing on these walls. Even though their weapon is not even pointing at you, they will still shoot you. This won't happen to the host, only to the client, and it is really frustrating on the death sentence difficulty, since 2 or 3 shots have the potential to kill you. If you want to know more about this bug, I highly suggest watching Bay1K's showcase video on this. It explains this bug in a better way, and more detailed. Now, this isn't really a bug or anything, but I wanted to mention it anyway, because of how odd it is. Underneath the St. Martin Bank heist, there are a bunch of objects and cars that pretty much serve no purpose, I assume. They are staying down here at the start of the heist, and will continue to stay down here No matter what, if the heist stays stealth or goes loud, they always will be down there. I'm not really sure why Overkill added these objects down here. It's really weird. Have you ever equipped the quote-unquote silent saw and then sawed something open like doors, just to realize the saw isn't as silent as you thought it would be? Well, worry no more, because if you saw in the air and then proceed to saw anything for 1 or 2 seconds, the saw will be actually silent and no one will hear it. I say 1 or 2 seconds specifically, because if you saw for too long, others will hear it, so be quick with it. I'm not sure who discovered this, it definitely wasn't me, but I assume unknown Nite is a good guess. He made a video about this like 2 years ago. If you want to watch it, I will put the link to it in the video description. Same goes for the Bay1K video that I showed earlier. Now let's talk about something that is quite useful. Duping items, that is. There are certain items like the saws on Reservoir Dogs heist or on No Mercy or keycards. Basically anything that isn't a loot bag can be duped. You dupe items by taking it the very same time as another player. This can work with 4 players as well, but it's pretty difficult to get that same item for 4 players. On top of that, it seems like that Overkill tried to fix this, or at least they made it a lot harder to dupe, considering it took us 4 players and quite a lot of tries to get this keycard dupe done. Way longer than what it used to be. Something else that is kinda useful are planks to board up windows. On Reservoir Dogs heist, you want to board up these windows so that cops won't jump through them, right? Ha! Wrong! While you can board up the windows, the cops don't really care about physics and just sorta jump through the window no matter what. I honestly cannot tell if that happens somewhere else on a different heist, but I'm pretty sure Reservoir Dogs heist is the only one cursed with this bug. Alright, I think it's time we start to talk about some exploits. Then later on we will be talking about out of bounds glitches and stuff, since there are quite a few. Anyway, starting on Firestarter, the cop spawns are tied to this fence here. Meaning there will be no cop spawns whatsoever, assuming this fence will not be cut. But it's pointless anyway, since you are forced to cut this fence to proceed. At least you might think that. You can actually jump from the van above the fence and not cut it. Kill all of the gangsters, doesn't matter if it goes loud, no cops will ever spawn. Now if the gangsters taken care of, you can put all of the bags next to the fence, then cut it and secure all of them with no problems whatsoever. The head exploit is pretty well known, but for the ones that don't really know what it is, I will explain either way. Basically, the game only cares about heads. You can see these 2 on cameras. Note how there are squares on everyone's head. So basically this means if you were to tie down a civilian and hide their head into a wall or something, civilians or guards won't really give a shit, because the head is not visible for them. The same applies for the heisters as well, of course. This is used in Loud as well, to track down where the heisters are, so that the cops would know where they need to go. Now with this knowledge, you can actually exploit this by tricking the game into thinking we are in a completely different room instead of where we actually are. This can be accomplished by standing on top of a shelf or something. Basically anything that makes our head stick in the roof high enough so that the cops think we are standing a room above us. A good example of this is on Panic Room on the ground floor. If you are good at parkour, you can eventually jump on top of the shelf and then move over to the door and stand on top of it. Your character head is high enough in the ceiling for the cops to think you are a room above, and most cops will go there. This can be abused really good on this heist, because once you finish the C4 objective, the game wants you to defend the helicopter, but in reality you just have to wait for fates. And by using this exploit you can literally go AFK and nothing will ever happen to you. Only the objective will trigger after some time. And if you were to do this for the rest of the objectives, you just finished Panic Room without much effort. Obviously enough, this works on other heists as well, like on Big Oil Day 2. If you go into this room on the ground floor and then stand on top of this lamp, it will have the same effect as on Panic Room. Pretty much no one will come to you, but most cops will go to the room above you. I'm pretty convinced There are a lot more heists out there where this exploit works. I just haven't gone around trying to find this, and I won't either, since I'm pretty sure you get the idea. So with head exploits, you can trick the game into thinking you are in a room you are currently not in. But you can also trick the game into thinking that you are not on the map anymore. Let me explain. When your head enters collision or a room that isn't reachable by cops, they tend to not spawn anymore, since they have no target to go for. An example of this is on Brooklyn 1010. By jumping from this fence into this room that you're not supposed to enter, of course, the cops don't really know where you are anymore. Once you are inside, the cops won't spawn. You only get some scripted spawns that cannot be prevented spawning. But apart from that, no more cops will ever come trying to stop you. Once you leave the room, obviously the cops will continue to spawn again as normal, and going back into the room stops it. Pretty simple, I guess. This also works on Goat Simulator. By standing on this hay, your head is in a position out of reach for cops. Somehow. I don't know. Cops will not spawn anymore by standing in this position. No matter how long you stand right here, they will just not spawn. No assault will happen, nothing. This is quite useful on this heist actually, since this heist is quite known to be quite difficult, and many people actually struggle to beat this heist. So just get 3 people standing in this spot, and another one, preferably not the host, doing the objectives, and you can cheese this heist using this exploit. But you didn't hear that from me. There are probably more heists out there where this exploit works as well. Like on Cook-Off, this used to work as well, but they patched this out recently on this heist, so it doesn't work anymore. But similar to the other head exploit I talked about earlier, I think you get the idea of what you can achieve with this. So I guess let's talk about other stuff again. Have you ever played Breath of Sky and looked up to the console and thought to yourself, man, I wish I could reach that button already without having to run through the entire plane. Well, during the time of making this video, I did some testing on this heist and found out that there is this invisible collision that just lets you jump on for some reason. Jump as far up as it lets you, then jump on this object up here, and then just move over to the upper floor and reach the button. I'm kind of surprised no one else found this already. In the future, I definitely will be using this in public games, since this is pretty easy to pull off and saves a good minute of time. And also it's a cool flex to the rest of the lobby, I'm not gonna lie. Did you know that hostages can be really good cover in this game? Well, not civilians, they suck a lot so they don't count. I mean the cops instead. By converting them, you can actually hide inside them. And no cop can ever hurt you except they are tasers and cloakers. Or if they were to come up close to you and punch you out of the hostage. This is pretty useful if you were to grab a choker real quick that is out in the open field, since you have some good cover provided by the convert you're trying to get. I don't suggest hiding inside converts all the time, because of the reasons I stated above, and also because you won't be able to regenerate armor since cops will still try to shoot you. Unless you're playing anarchist or something, then this armor regeneration thing isn't as bad. As you surely know, certain weapons that can electrocute, poison, or put enemies on fire get stunned and have animations for that stuff. At least for most units. Obviously some special units like bulldozers or winter shields do not get stunned. However, for some reason, the same applies to the cloakers and medics, sort of. They do react to fire, but have no animation for this. They just sorta crouch and stand up constantly. It's kinda like teabagging. It's pretty weird. They get somewhat stunned, but still can shoot you to some extent at the same time. And that's even worse with normal shields, they do not get stunned too. They don't even react to it at all until they die. I'm not sure why the shields have the ability to use a fire resistance potion, because the normal unit without the shield cannot. And also, the taser actually stuns the shield with ease, so I don't know. Alright, I think it's about time we talk about some out-of-bound glitches. Starting on First Hole Bank. As you have seen in the intro, you can clip out of bounds using this plant. When you fall down on the ground, you also want to crouch at the same time, allowing you to clip through the ground. Then by jumping off this invisible collision, far enough, you'll be put out of the heist. You then can run around here and jump back into the vault early. Get the bag secured in the vent, just to realize you just softlocked yourself, since you cannot open this gate from the inside. But if you were to have a pal with you doing the objectives, you could potentially save some time here, I guess. On Hell's Island there are two out of bounds glitches. One right here, where you have to put in the code to free Bane. You just sorta clip between these two objects and fall underneath the ground. It's not really useful though. The same applies to the other out of bound glitch on this heist. By jumping barely on top of this fence, you can then jump into this wall, because of course you can, and then jump down here and visit the map from a different angle. This isn't useful as well, since going before out of bounds, you are forced to gather together with the crewmates in this spot and you cannot go back. Another small thing in this heist you can do, which is actually pretty useful this time, is jumping from this side to the other without using the bridge. This is useful because you can mark where the box is that you need to hack later on. And obviously you can still jump back as well. On No Mercy you can go out of bounds as well, using this image on the wall. Just sort of face against it and eventually you will fall through the ground, placing you literally at the end part, allowing you to skip most of the heist. Similar to First Vault Bank, there's also this plant on the Golden Green Casino heist that lets you go out of bounds. By clipping through the ground, you get spawned inside of the vault area, assuming you moved into the right direction. This allows you to get the objective item pretty quickly and finish this heist easily under 2 minutes, assuming you know what you're doing. And that's where this video would have probably ended. However, I have to put out some massive shoutouts to Rose Yoshino specifically, and also the moderators of the PAYDAY2 speedrunning website, for making this video that much more interesting by providing me a list with out-of-bound glitches that I and probably most others didn't know. Without their help, this video surely would have been lacking some content. I have reached out to Rose Yoshino to potentially help me with this video, which then led into her and the other moderators creating this amazing list. I asked Rose specifically, since she is an extremely talented PAYDAY2 speedrunner, and also moderator for the before mentioned speedrunning website. You probably know her from the famous Golden Green Casino speedrun she made, with like 70,000 views. Be sure to check out her content, I will put a link to her YouTube channel in the video description. But anyway, let's continue with the out-of-bound glitches, shall we? On boiling point you can clip through the ground, using this box and these planks here. You just sort of press forward and left a couple of times, and eventually you will fall through the ground. The game will then teleport you back into the basement, allowing you to get faster times on objectives, assuming you skip the detonation from the EMP bomb. Using this table and chair and big oil, you can also clip straight through the ground. You cannot do much though if you were to be alone, but you can get yourself stuck in the wall like this, and if you were to have a good pal with you, they could use this to get into the engine room early, then grab the right engine for the other player to grab, and then jump back into the heist again. It all sounds really weird, and trust me, it is really weird. Right, let's change things a bit by not talking about out-of-bounds glitches for a second. On Stealing Xmas you can duplicate the objective bags by throwing it on the ground next to the circle where you have to secure it in. Then grab it at the same time you are launching the bag with the help of HE rounds from your shotgun into the secure zone. This will make the game think you secured the bag, even though you're currently carrying it. Do this another time and then actually secure the bag, then you won't need to secure any other bags afterwards. You just have to do the objective for getting the other bags, but you don't have to secure it. This is pretty pointless for a normal playthrough, but pretty good for a speedrun. On the Mercy you probably sometimes have seen players somehow going out of the elevator, being really high up in the sky like this. This is just some weird visual bug. By standing in this corner before the elevator starts to move, the player model gets launched somewhere in the stratosphere. Again, this is only visible for the other players in the lobby, not for the one who is actually doing it. As you can see from my good friend's point of view, he does nothing more than standing in this corner. What I think is pretty funny about this is the fact that Overkill tried to fix this at some point, but as you can see, that clearly didn't work. On the diamond heist, not the actual diamond, I mean the classic one from PAYDAY the Heist, there is this plant here that also lets you go through the ground, straight into the vault area. Pretty convenient, isn't it? You were also able to throw the bags on the backside of the vault, allowing the bags to fall through the ground and spawn outside. But I myself couldn't replicate this anymore, so I don't know if this still works or not. Another classic heist where there is some weird out of bounds glitch is Counterfeit. By jumping on this chair, you can either clip through the house or somehow clip through the ground on top of the sewer system. Either you land on top of the system or you somehow jump into it, which will softlock you. But if you're good enough, you can jump off the sewers and then into the basement. Obviously, you will be softlocked too if you didn't grab crowbars or didn't interact with the two hacking boxes. Otherwise, the objective won't ever trigger. Going back to the strat tutorial on day 1, instead of going straight as the game wants you to do, you can go left instead and jump up here to the fence, then walk across the fence and do some parkour around here. Once you reach the quote-unquote end, I guess, you can kill the guard in a pretty dumb way. It also leads into some interesting situation with Dallas voice lines.
There's a guard up ahead. I don't think I can sneak by him.
But if you were to be a lot better in jumping, you can also jump on top of this and not kill the guard. But even if you go this far, it doesn't really do much. On Meltdown there's a super easy out of bounds glitch to do. It just requires the right RNG for this wooden crate to spawn. But once it's there, you can just clip through the ground and spawn back outside if you want to. There is not much more to this. Another small out of bounds glitch can be found on Hotline Miami Day 1, with this gas can here. You can just run into this corner, and when you crouch at the same time you fall down, you will clip through the ground. But similar to Meltdown, this does pretty much nothing. Alright, let's talk about Desync for a second. Sometimes it can be pretty frustrating to get converts, especially as a client. While in this background footage, it seems like that the cop is standing in front of me, but he's actually standing somewhere completely else that only the host would see. Hence why the cop keeps losing my attention. The cop is not standing in front of me, it just looks like it. You barely ever notice this anyway, since you can kill them without any problems anyway, since it doesn't matter where the cop is actually standing, he still takes the damage. Now this is something I can't explain well. On a very, very rare occasion, the game sometimes doesn't know anymore who is who. As you can see here, the game got confused with who is actually saying stuff. I didn't say these things, that was someone else. It gets even better when this person leaves the lobby. The game thinks I actually left the game, but I didn't. It is really weird, but fortunately it doesn't happen that much. The next 3 out of bounds glitches are gonna be shown using footage from others, since these glitches are pretty hard to pull off, so I'm just gonna use their footage. Starting on White House, you can go out of bounds using Second Wind as well. You can use this glitch to spawn back into the vault and grab the pardons early. To leave the room again, you have to make sure you're on the last hack on the PC so that the door will open, otherwise you will be soft locked. On the Dragon Heist, you can jump right into the warehouse area using this car here. It looks really easy to do, I know, but it is pretty damn difficult to pull off. I tried this myself several times, but if you know what you're doing, you can finish this heist under 2 minutes as well using this glitch. And for the last heist, we're gonna talk about Santa's workshop. You can go out of bounds right here, bypassing the trigger, for the heist to go loud. So this means you can use this glitch to essentially play this heist in stealth. But there are so many more weird things involved in this, which would make this video like 2 times longer if I were to explain it all. So instead of doing that, I highly suggest watching Levi Barber's video on this. Trust me, it is kinda interesting. And that's pretty much it. There are a few more glitches out there, but they are so insignificant and sometimes even really hard to pull off that I feel like it's not worth mentioning them. Besides, this video is like 30 minutes long already. I think we have enough covered anyway, but if I were to find more actually interesting bugs, and also enough of them, I might make a part 2, but we will have to see about that. So if you know any bug or glitch that I didn't mention, that you also think is rather interesting, feel free to comment it. Again, I have to give some massive shoutouts to Rose Yoshino for helping me out with this video. Go subscribe to her. I don't know what else to say really. Thanks for watching, I guess. Have a good time.